Indianapolis, which is kind of it's a jungle out there in Indy these days, Brian. I'm hearing it's the most fabulous city. It may replace, what is it, Plainview, Long Island, as the most magical place on earth. If Pat McAfee's writing or reading the copy, holy, but can we talk about for a second how much did the state of Indiana pay for the Royal Rumble? I remember that it was talked about, but I don't remember the figure. But the Royal Rumble, they're getting a SummerSlam coming up at some point. They got the another big show maybe in that package. They were in Indy for SmackDown the night before over at the little bitty field house, only seated 15,000 or whatever. How much money did they manhole cover of the city of Indianapolis? Am I overstating this?
I don't even know what the hell that means. I've never heard that analogy before. What the hell does that mean?
If you want to make love to the entire city, you just take off a manhole cover and go to town.
I guess you're going to have to be a small manhole cover.
Over the hole, and we don't know, but the orifices were very kind to Indy.
Well, they were, and if you saw the press conference, and I know you didn't, but Paul Levesque, the first thing he did was blow Pat McAfee and put him over the top for connecting them with the people from Indianapolis. So we'll see. But according to the Indy Star newspaper, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, and WrestleMania stand to bring in excess of $350 million in economic impact to Indy when it's all said and done. More than $40 million is expected to be infused into the city from the Royal Rumble alone.
But how much did the city infuse into the WWE? Was that reported?
I'm trying to find the number. I'll let you know what I can find.
Because I think that infusion, it has to be significant for the level of, my God, Vince didn't talk about the Garden like they were talking about Indy, that Tuttle in town. And they didn't even once mention a St. Elmo Steakhouse.
Or St. Elmo's Fire.
Well, no, hold your tongue. No, well, yes, but hold your tongue on it because St. Elmo's is a historic place and we don't want it to burn down, and they still grill those steaks the old-fashioned way. They had dumb waiters. My mom and I went to St. Elmo's Steakhouse because it was across the way. I can't remember. It's been 50 years or whatever. But it's across the way in some respect from the Expo Center to where we went to Bruiser's matches. Unfortunately, I missed the promotional war live, and I got more like Bruiser and Crusher against the Bounty Hunters type of era. But nevertheless, they had dumb waiters that brought up the baked potatoes. And I know the kids are now saying, well, why couldn't they hire some smarter people? Google dumb waiters. If I only had time to educate you children. But that was cool watching a bam, bam, and the door open up, and here comes 72 baked potatoes individually wrapped in silver aluminum foil. I had OCD even then. I appreciated things like that as a child.
I'm trying to find anything about it, and actually I'm not finding any numbers, just announcements. But here's something just went up this morning, just a half hour ago, from the Indianapolis Recorder newspaper. Here are records that WWE set this weekend.
Oh, boy.
Largest gate in single night WWE history. Ticket sales surpassed all previous Royal Rumble editions and all non-WrestleMania single night gates.
Well, as a matter of fact, they said on the broadcast, as we say in the business, that it was the fourth biggest gate. It was behind three of the double night WrestleManias. I think last year's 2 and 1 the before, and otherwise it was an all-time record for anything.
Record viewership. Domestic viewership on Peacock rose nearly 14% from last year's record-setting Royal Rumble, while international streaming numbers surged even higher following the shift to Netflix globally. Now, that's no firm numbers there, but they're saying 14% higher than last year, which is a pretty hot Royal Rumble. I mean, that was Cody winning it, right?
Well, yes, but the bigger thing is globally, exponentially. Many big numbers. We don't know, but it's a goddamn lot. You know, it's gotten ridiculous.
Listen to this.
The large numbers.
Listen to this.
Difficult mathematics. Go ahead.
Merchandise boom. In partnership with Fanatics, merchandise sales soared more than 95% over the previous record set in 2024, making it the highest grossing non-WrestleMania event in WWE history.
Now, wait a minute.
Wow.
I'm just a small town bird lawyer, Brian. We've established that. But an increase of 95% means that they doubled what they did last year, which was a record.
Sponsorship revenue soars. 14 sponsors. All matches featuring sponsorship. Revenue climbed 94% over last year's record. God, it's not even just like 5% increase. 94%, 95%. And finally, social media explosion. The event set a new high for social video views in Royal Rumble history. A standout moment featuring Braun Breaker's spearing popular streamer iShowSpeed became the most viewed Royal Rumble social post of all time, generating over 300 million views.
Jesus H. Christ.
In less than 24 hours. Reads like a press release. I don't know if it was sent to them as a press release, but it's from the Indianapolis Recorder.
Well, so good Lord, if they could have only got rid of Vince 10 years ago, what the fuck may have happened?
But you know what? If they had gotten rid of Vince 10 years ago, let's say, or 15 years ago, I don't know if everything would have ended up the same way. It was kind of a perfect storm. Nick Khan is the right guy, and no one can deny that in any way. And quite frankly, Paul Levesque right now is the right guy. And in tandem with Lee Fitting, and he keeps his hands to himself or whatever that fuck his problem is, they're working well right now. I don't know if that group would have been put together. Lee Fitting would still be at ESPN.
Yeah.
If it was 10 years ago. Would Nick Khan have made the move 10 years ago? TV was in a different place. Media rights fees were in a different place. It all worked out best for everyone but Vince, I guess.
I was just exaggerating anyway. They could have kept him till maybe 6 years ago. Now, anyway, so we were in Indianapolis for the Royal Rumble, where apparently every single son of a bitch of the 70,000 people that showed up to the Lucas's stadium, apparently every single one of them had an ATM in their back pocket and just fucking pissed cash across the merchandise tables and live like Caligula. I don't know what's going on with these people.
Shamsi, what are you watching most closely as we inch towards the trade deadline?
Malika, I think all eyes are on the NBA are certainly on the Phoenix Suns. A lot of because of what's transpired over the last several days. But from what I'm told, there are multiple teams making really aggressive calls to the Suns on Kevin Durant. Obviously, we know what has happened. He has made it clear. He had made it clear that he did not want a reunion with the Warriors. The Warriors made a very strong pursuit of him over the last week, and several calls are continuing to pour in. One thing I do want to clarify, Kevin Durant has not requested a trade, and it's my understanding most of all these conversations this week, it was somewhat blindsiding because going into this week and this season, I don't think a trade was something he was thinking about. He has wanted to stay in Phoenix. And another situation to monitor as well, Atlanta with what they could do. DeAndre Hunter, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Clint Capella, all veteran players that teams are calling them.
Okay, Atlanta and Phoenix. Shams, thank you so very much. We'll let you get back to hitting the phones as we bring it back inside our studios here. Aggressive calls saying here on Kevin Durant. Brian, how do we get to this point?
Aggressive calls.
Is that like a volume or
Yeah.
like an offer?
You've had some aggressive calls.
Yeah, I've seen some aggressive calls.
Yeah. So the thing is, the Suns were in a spot. They're a 500 team. They are in the second apron. They were having difficulty trying to figure out how to improve. They tried for weeks to find a way to trade Bradley Beal. They could not find a way to trade Bradley Beal. Kevin Durant is eligible for an extension this summer. They aren't probably sure how that's going to go. They painted themselves into a corner. So when they realized they couldn't trade Bradley Beal, they started having the discussions with the Golden State Warriors about moving Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Now, everybody can play the game they want to play about who called whom. At the end of the day, they were making a deal for Kevin Durant. The Miami Heat, for weeks, as you know, were trying to trade Jimmy Butler. After all kinds of calls, they found a package that they liked, and that package belonged to the Golden State Warriors. So really what this became was a game between the Warriors, the Suns, and the Heat, involving Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant, and Andrew Wiggins. And they put a deal together, and they were, again, everybody's going to have their story about how close they were, but there was a point where it looked like Kevin Durant might be headed for a reunion. And Kevin Durant didn't like the sound of that. And Kevin Durant let it be known he didn't want to go back to Golden State. And so when that fell apart, and the Suns kind of came out of it, there was still that deal that had been negotiated between the Warriors and the Heat.
Right.
And we know that the Warriors have been trying to trade for a star going back a year. Last trade day and last summer, Kevin Durant, after missing a bunch of times, they finally decided, let's get the deal we can make with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler wanted the Suns, but part of the reason he wanted the Suns is they were going to give him a contract extension. So what did the Warriors do to make sure they could get this deal done? They negotiated a contract extension. Right here we have an imperfect deal, but we still have Jimmy Butler out and the Warriors adding a star. And now we watch and see what happens with Kevin Durant, and also where he's going to be mentally after being involved in trade.
And that's the question, because in the simplest terms possible, the Phoenix Suns are on the outside of this deal looking in. They do not want to trade. They will not trade Devin Booker. That is their franchise cornerstone. They have been unable to trade Bradley Beal. And so then you look around and say, okay, well, here's Kevin Durant. Bob, you know Kevin Durant well. You played with Kevin Durant. Mentally, I just imagine when you hear your name in trade talks like that, feeling like you've accomplished what you have, no player is untouchable, but how does that impact a locker room and an organization now?
Quite a bit. I mean, especially for somebody of his caliber, you can argue where he will go down in the history of the NBA, but I would put him at least in the top 10, best ever play. And so I saw Kevin 3 weeks ago. Okay, so I saw Kevin at a football game a few weeks ago, and I asked him before all this, and I said, hey, are you good? Are you happy? And he said to my face, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to be traded. And I believe it. And I believe he has felt that way all along. But then when you hear your name being mentioned out of, for him at least, I think it was a shock. He was kind of like, I didn't push for this. I didn't ask for this. And then to hear all the people speculating on the Warriors, I actually think the Warriors did the right thing by honoring Kevin's request. Kevin could have gone anywhere in 2016. Any team he wanted to go to, he could have went to. He went to the Warriors, and he's the only person in that whole equation that took criticism for it. I didn't. Joe Lacob didn't. Steve Kerr didn't. Steph Curry didn't. Draymond Green didn't. Only Kevin was the one that faced scrutiny. So whatever Kevin would want, had I still been with the Warriors, Kevin would get. He brought 2 championships, tried for a third, ended up getting hurt in that pursuit, 2 finals MVPs. So I like that the Warriors said, we hear you, we wanted you, we respect that you don't want to be here, that's fine. But now if you're Kevin, right, to your question, yeah, you're sitting there going, hang on a second here. I am doing what you pay me to do. I'm playing basketball. I'm playing at a very good, high rate. And now I hear my name being mentioned. So he's a human being. You know, we try to mythologize. He's a guy. So, you played. I'm not a player. I don't know. But I imagine as a human being, you're kind of shaken up.
Well, I was a player, but I wasn't that type of player. Make no mistake about it. But the question is why? Why? We'll talk.
Timeless Tony Storm, the big reveal. So you've seen the AEW Collision, and that's the point in itself, episode where Tony reverts back from her initial character, which is who has amnesia and doesn't remember she's in AEW, to then becoming Timeless Tony Storm once again. Do you want to give us sort of like a layout of the past 6-7 weeks since you returned, or would you prefer I do it?
I prefer you do it because, quite honestly, I have been watching everything she's done, and it's one of those things. I said Tony Storm may be the best act, the most original act, the most well thought out with every aspect, every nuance and detail. It's a word I used to use all the time. But black and white, her commitment to the bid, everything there, I believe, was a gold mine. And then it kind of just fizzled off. And even with this Mariah May type of angle, I believe that Tony Storm on her own could have still been doing things for many weeks and months. Like I talked about with, vignettes. locals, giving her little spots to shine, commentary. You could have bought almost a full year before this girl even sniffed the woman's title. And you kind of like really use the express lane to do that, then it feels like the express lane from new toy to old toy, which Tony Khan just shuffles these talents around like they're action figures.
Britt Baker. I mean, that's I mean, we don't know if she's been kept off TV because of a fallout or anything, but I mean, she's now the old toy because you did have Tony Storm and now you've got Mercedes Moné. So yeah, it's a revolving door of characters. I don't know why Tony Storm was taken off TV for 4 months at all. I don't know if she was injured. I don't know if she requested the time off. And I'll tell you what, there's an awful lot of people requesting time off from AEW and getting it. It's like, where's Saraya? Where's Paige? Like, where's so many? Anyway, we're getting off on a tangent.
Let me get this point across too, because what you're saying is excellent. This is the point in modern wrestling, and I'll give Paul Heyman and Axel Rotten. I told this story before. Paul and Axel did not get along at all. But that didn't mean Paul was just going to sit Axel at home. By the way, we work, we get paid. So there's no guarantee to even sit at home and get paid. He still brought Axel in and said, I don't personally, he never said it, but you could tell he didn't personally get along with Axel. They butted heads all the time. Axel didn't like him. Paul didn't like him. That's my educated guess just from watching them interact. And I wrestled Axel plenty of times where Paul was interacting with all three of us. Very much a cold shoulder to Axel, very favorable to me. And then years later, it was, I got the feeling of the Axel Rotten treatment. With that being said, Axel Rotten was brought in to work even more to put other talent over. Paulie still saw Axel is a hell of a hand, a great talent to get the talent I want to push over, and I'm not sitting him at home. I'm using him. And now, of course, I'm never going to do anything with him, but what I can do is use him to get other people over. Tony Khan's not even doing that with the old toys and new toys. One last factor. Modern wrestling. Tony Storm, Britt Baker, this girl, Mariah May, Mercedes Moné, anybody in the WWE does it too. Okay, we got them to this point. They're instantly and permanently over. So no matter what we do to them or don't do with them, they're staying over. Absolutely 100% wrong. And this proves it. If you're gone, no matter how over you are, I should say, when you're gone a certain amount of time, the fans will forget, and you never come back with the same amount of impact as that initial first impression. Is there anything you agree, disagree with that?
Steve Austin, when he came back in late 2000 after the neck surgery, it was never quite the same. And I don't care who's going to argue with me on that, it's true. I mean, they didn't book him as well.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point, because when he got his neck hurt with Owen Hart, he raised even more hell that had nothing to do with the ring. He got even more over. It was not Steve's fault. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, I mean, he was gone 11 months, and apart from, a brief bit of like backlash, like 5 months afterwards, where he dropped, I think he destroyed the DX Express or something. And then he just disappeared again. And I tell you what, it's out of sight, out of mind. And you will find out, even Steve Austin, that the company will survive without you. And then all of a sudden, the new shiny toy is The Rock. And I'm not saying there's interpersonal rivalries between those two or anything like that, but it wasn't quite the same when he came back. So if it's not quite the same when Steve Austin comes back, how's it going to be the same for Toni Storm to come back? And that leads us to her return, 4 months, sort of out of the blue, really, almost. She re-debuts, as it were, as her old persona, which was nothing really other than wearing some, heavy metal t-shirts. And now all of a sudden she's got amnesia. She doesn't remember time as Toni Storm, the character. She doesn't remember her first stint in AEW as Toni Storm. And she's wrestling like a rookie. She's so happy to be in AEW. She's wrestling like a rookie, as I say, with snapmares and arm bars and that kind of thing. And then there's also, she's introducing herself to wrestlers like she's never met them before, like Thunder Rosa, etc. And then on AEW Collision this past Saturday, Tony Schiavone hosts Toni Storm and Mariah May, who is the AEW Women's Champion, in a face-to-face promotional interview. And the reason being is Toni Storm is the #1 contender after winning the Casino Gauntlet. and that's why they were facing off. Tony basically acts like she's Mariah's biggest fan, doesn't know who she is, she's starstruck, and then hugs her. Mariah May's already let Tony know that she's nothing to her. And then when Tony goes into the hug, Mariah May attacks Tony, and that's sort of the setup to the rest of it. So, Stevie, what happened next?
I'm trying to define in my mind exactly what was thought of with what happened next. Because you might skip a couple little steps and details, but she stripped out of the original gimmick into her bra and panties and then said it was the performance of a lifetime. Did I skip anything?
That's pretty much it. The
So it was an
hardest
instant
role you'll ever play
performance.
is yourself, and that it was all a ruse, and it was the performance of a lifetime.
The pro wrestling, it was all ruse. I live on a group beats the hell out of somebody for 6-7 weeks, and then when the tag team match comes up with the babyface who finally trusts the former heel, that heel who's had his face caved in for 7 weeks turns and says it was all a ruse. That's a trope that needs to go away. We talk about the tired old wrestling tropes. Number one here, let's talk about this. Just an overarching theme with this. Looking at this. Why is the babyface being deceptive to the heel? Why is the babyface trying to lure the heel into a false sense of security? Why is the babyface tricking the heel? These are all characteristics that the heel does, right? To be deceptive, to do a sleight of hand, to act like there's something and then it was all a ruse. What's the point in doing it? And that's the thing too. This all happened in one segment, correct? This was not 4 weeks of Toni Storm being her lackey, her number one super fan, and Mariah May finally saying, maybe she doesn't remember and lets the guard down. Then it comes. They've condensed 4 to 8 weeks of, and this could have been leading up to whatever pay-per-view there is, where Tony does turn back in the timeless Toni Storm and cost Mariah May the title. Then it was all a ruse. But she built up no trust within the heel to say, I can treat her like crap if she doesn't remember that we even have an angle. Is that what you're thinking too? There's a big missing component.
Yeah, there's two things really in that. Well, I mean, there's more, but like, why do you, one, get beaten up and then you get up and say, ha, I tricked you?
So sold everything.
Yeah, so one, she's the Terminator, and two, how does Toni Storm's deception help her gain an edge on Mariah May in any way if she didn't gain Mariah May's trust, as you said?
You're absolutely right. Or cost her the women's title and then reveal, I was just playing with you all along to get back at you. You're a bitch. And that's it. Because they gotta call them bitches. You gotta get that because that'll be, she's a bitch. So, and I said it 3 times, so man, you never hear that on the show. I'm sorry.
You turn into a Carly, man.
Don't get me started on what they've done to Okada again. I got enough heat for that too. He's perfect and everything's great.
I tell you what, he's not a short match wrestler because he is slow. He will go his pace, whether it's long or short. Let me tell you. I think I might be honest.
You're getting your $5 million, whether you work 20 or 2 minutes. So let's shorten it up a little bit.
Now, there's another bit that I want to bring to you is why now? Why is Toni Storm all of a sudden, they have their first face-to-face interaction? I mean, Mariah May's obviously been doing commentary and talk about Toni Storm and all the girls and basically saying they're all terrible and she's great. Here's the thing though, they're building up to AEW Grand Slam, which is in Brisbane, Australia, which one is actually a very, very hard city to sell out. It's a remote city even for Australia. So it's quite hard to sort of pack people in because people aren't going to be driving up, from other cities. You're going to have to fly in. And two, they're 3 weeks out. The tickets are not selling anywhere. I mean, originally it was a stadium show that's now moved to an arena, which they're still not selling out. And as of this recording still, because we're on Wednesday morning / afternoon we record this, so we don't know what's happening on Dynamite tonight, there's only 2 matches announced. And one of them happens to be Toni Storm versus Mariah May. So my theory is that they had to sort of race towards getting timeless Toni Storm back as an established character on television to help try and sell tickets and to sort of convince fans that there's a good chance that she will win.
This is Tony Storm's home country, correct?
No, she's from New Zealand,
I'm sorry.
but it's close enough.
It will still garner her as a hometown hero. Which
Home continent
home
hero.
hemisphere hero. How's
Yeah,
that?
basically. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, it's close enough because obviously it's in that area of the world, so they can identify where.
Yeah, I know, but it's the same as you. It's like, hey, welcome your hometown hero, Stevie, Bret Hart.
The North American connection, the Canada connection. Strike Force 2, bring them back. I don't think Fred and I being attacked in those matches better not be Okada-like, let me tell you that. We will not stand for that. We're not paid by the hour or hopefully the minute. The thing about Tony Storm, let's do a little 2020 hindsight booking. It probably would have sold out an arena and possibly sold out a stadium if she wasn't going for a quarter or a third of the year. That's what's hurting it. And now you're hot-shotting her back to a gimmick. And let me tell you, when you try to do this a second time, people, it's a lot less impactful. It's not going to get over as much as if she was never off TV and you built it steadily up. In other words, people now are looking like, all right, it was a ruse. You're bringing her back, as Tom was telling you. The fans are pretty smart. You're bringing her back just to try to sell show out. You just rushing her back for this or that or whatever, and it's never going to be the same as the first impression, unfortunately for her. Because like I said in the beginning, they did everything right. This is like the NWO entrance with the black and white, with the burn film grain effect, all these little things that they do to make them say, these people and her, in this case, she's not like anybody else on the roster. She's special. Well, she's so special and she's so over, why did she go away? That's outside of, God forbid, any personal issues, family issues, medical issues, whatever. I'm talking about strictly our information. We have no idea except for the fact she was taken off TV or she needed time off TV. That doesn't mean she couldn't continue to do vignettes and things if she could physically do them. I keep putting up that disclaimer because I don't know. But you really cannot recapture lightning in a bottle the second time. And if you could, please repeat that with everybody else on the roster because it's sorely needed.
My biggest issue, apart from the fact that it was on AEW Collision where, you know, why won, I think it was 250,000 watched it. And if it was on Dynamite combining television and Max, you'd probably get 3 times the amount of viewers if you did it on Dynamite. But that's maybe the biggest issue. The second biggest issue is, why do it 3 weeks out? Because I think, you know, when you have the big reveal leading to a big show, it's sort of best to do the big reveal very close to the big show. And now you've got 3 weeks expanse of time where you have to keep on building the story, even though the big angle's now already happened. I mean, can you think of any other examples where that works better, where you have the big reveal, the big angle, and then there's tons of TV to fill time in before the big show?
Well, if you booked it right and you had, all right, we got 3 weeks to do this, we need to make 3 weeks count, boost the ticket sales, get some pay-per-view buys, whatever it might be. There was something like where people said, oh, we're going to do a surprise at the show. We've talked about this a little bit. Okay, if they've already bought the ticket, bought the pay-per-view, and then you give them the rock, or you give them a surprise at the end, or whatever it might be, you didn't sell one ticket or pay-per-view buy off of him being there. But if you advertise, I get sometimes, hey, it's already sold out, it already did well. Rocket is going to be a surprise at the end of like it was bad blood or something. I get that. What I'm saying with Tony Storm, they at least did it to try to buy some time to build up something so people will buy a ticket or the pay-per-view to see her. But the damage is already done because her and Big Show were doing the PR for the show at the stadium, and then it got transferred to the arena. I remember seeing a clip of them like in the stadium, right, doing something for a media day.
Yeah, that was quite a few months ago, yeah.
Well, they aired it. It came up in my feed. I didn't know what it was, but that's the smart thing to do. But if they did it a week out, James, unless you had something where you're selling something huge there, I don't know if they're going to get a last-minute spike in ticket sales based on that. 3 weeks out, it's a possibility.
actually, she never went away. You wouldn't need to try to rush it 3 weeks out and try to do whatever you can. She should have been talking about some match. When did Mariah May win the title?
All in Wembley, the Wembley show, August.
So a while ago. Well, there you go. If Tony, now if she had injured Tony by turning on her and there was an angle off of that, Tony returns, her rematch will be in Australia. I get that, but do we even know if they're gonna have they're gonna have the match, I would assume, right?
Oh yeah, that's already advertised. As I say, that's one of 2 matches advertised for the arena show. I should also stress here, this isn't a pay-per-view. I think this is a TV special, which, as of this recording, I think, we still don't know what time it's airing.
I mean, these are important details. Also, are they doing the same thing that they did? It was all in was Wembley. This year we're gonna get it confused again. Then a week later was All Out in Chicago. One was a TV, one was the pay-per-view.
No, both the pay-per-views. Both the pay-per-views. The way I work it out is in, out, shake it all about. So that's how you render
shake you upside down in your pockets for your money. In 2 weeks, you do 2 pay-per-views.
Yeah.
Okay, so why is this such a big deal? Why are we doing? I know Grand Slam is usually their TV special at the Arthur Ashe Stadium, which that always looked great. They did 2 or 3 Grand Slams at Arthur Ashe. That's a great building. But man, the logistics of flying talent over, flying production crews, building the set, moving it from a stadium to an arena. What's the rent look like? Did you pay the rent on the stadium? Did you just get a piece? There's a lot of different clunky logistic things that need to happen, especially shifting it to a smaller arena. Now what's the seating chart going to be? Now where are you going to put the Titantron? Where are you going to put this? They're still not selling out. What do we do to fill seats? What do we got to bring in the Tarp Emporium? What do we have to do? It's a lot of, this is very, and it's international. So what if there's flight delays? When you have to fly to town out like early for that now? Even though it was always booked that way, and you don't know what time the show starts. So come on.
I don't know if it's like when the show starts, but you don't know when it's airing in the States, because there's going to be how much, 17-hour time difference or something stupid?
So I'm assuming it's a taped show in the States, but live there, possibly?
Yeah, I figure so. What was the WWE show? There we go, Elimination Chamber in Perth. I figured that they decided to go to Australia after WWE had huge success in Perth. And
But they also did Super Showdown in Australia, correct?
Did they?
Yeah, I thought it was Saudi, but I think the Super Showdown was actually Australia, the first show in a new stadium, I believe.
Oh, for God's sake. Unless it was a special.
No, it was a pay-per-view, Super Showdown.
Elimination Chamber Perth was the last one.
Not the last, I'm talking about one of them. I think the first one they did.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. October 6th, Super Showdown Melbourne Cricket Ground, and that was 2020. That was 2018.
Take that, CTE, take that.
Concussion protocol. So Dakota Kai ends up with a concussion. She's on the sidelines until doctors decide that she's over it, basically, which is fine. And absolutely what you should be doing. Now, we're going to be talking about... Hello all, James here. Now, whether you're a fan of AEW or a fan of WWE or both promotions or pro wrestling in general, I don't think you still probably fully know the extent of just how little business acumen AEW and Tony Khan have displayed recently with the booking of the AEW Grand Slam Brisbane show. Now, it's the most incompetently promoted wrestling arena event that I've seen since the Authors of Pain tried to run the Wrestling Entertainment Series debacle in 2022. That'd be a story for another video. Anyway, here's why. WWE, who are riding the wave of popularity at the moment, not seen since the Attitude Era in regards to live event sales, if ever, sold nearly 53,000 tickets to WWE's Elimination Chamber Perth show last February. Tony Khan apparently figured that if WWE could successfully run an Australian stadium event, then so could AEW. And Kaluka AEW Grand Slam Brisbane in Australia was announced. To backtrack somewhat, AEW's UK debut culminated in AEW All in Wembley, drew around 70,000 people paid in 2023. It was AEW's first time in the UK and the first wrestling event in Wembley Stadium since the much vaunted near mythical WWF SummerSlam 1992 show. Wembley itself, in my opinion, was the true draw of that show. Not the card, because MJF and Adam Cole's the main event. I didn't really see that as, a major. I didn't see the entire card as being an amazing card. It was a great show. But that being said, I think Wembley itself was the drawing card to get so many people there, and it was a massive success because of that. All in, Wembley 2 had a massive drop-off for 3 reasons. The novelty had worn off, AEW's popularity had completely dropped off between 23 and 24, and a lack of matches announced in advance, especially with storylines attached to them, but they still pulled in more than 40,000, or around about 40,000 paid for that show. My guess is Tony Khan reasoned that their first show down under would be successful for the same reasons as All in Wembley 1. Australia is a virgin territory, and the Australian fan base is starved for live wrestling, which would be the correct thought process if the wrestling promotion in question was WWE. Now, WWE, why do I say this? WWE has decades of exposure in Australia. AEW doesn't. I mean, obviously, they're only 5-6 years old, the company, but the fact is that not only is AEW not an established brand in Australia, like WWE is, almost nobody watches AEW in Australia at all. And if you think I'm exaggerating, in the whole of Australia, and keep in mind this is a country with a population of just under 27 million people, AEW programming viewership peaks at around 20,000 viewers per show. And I'm not saying average viewers, average viewership per show, that's lower. This is the peak. Nobody more than 20,000 people watch any AEW show in Australia at any given time. So to give you an example of how small a number that is, on this very channel, this YouTube channel, I posted 3 videos, and all of them have achieved multiples more than apparently the amount of AEW fans who bothered to tune into Dynamite or whatever every single week in the entire country of Australia. That's how small the number is. So you're armed with this information. What do you do? Of course, you book a 55,000 seat venue in a country where only 20,000 people can be asked picking up the remotes and watching your shows for free. Now, there's another problem. Why Brisbane? Anybody local knows that Brisbane is not only less populous than Sydney and Melbourne, but it's even more difficult to get to than anywhere else in Australia. I guess everywhere seems to be difficult to get to in Australia as well. Now, in England, and I've got personal experience with this, most major cities are a reasonable distance away that you can do the journey in the same day. You don't have to stay over. So, I'm in the Greater Manchester area. I drove to All in Wembley 1, drove back the same night. And people in Brisbane, people who are not in Brisbane, are not going to have that same luxury. I mean, you're going to have to fly in, get a hotel, or, drive, a day, to get there, depending on where you are. So there's another problem as well. Brisbane residents have also reported that almost no local advertising for the event has been witnessed at all. So even if hordes of Brisbane-based AEW fans existed, which they clearly don't, most wouldn't even know that there was a show on anyway, because they just haven't put any advertising into the show whatsoever, or if they have, it's either badly distributed or they've not paid enough. Now, taking all that into consideration, of course, ticket sales have been enormously disappointing. So this has prompted AEW to move to the far smaller Brisbane Entertainment Centre from the Suncorp Stadium, where they still haven't sold anywhere near enough tickets to justify the trip. As of a couple of weeks ago, there were still floor seats available for this place anyway. The lack of ticket sales has been a problem, so much of a problem that fans who bought tickets early for the stadium show were then confounded and then straight up pissed off in equal measure when AEW started heavily discounting and then offering 2-for-1 ticket sale deals in order to fill the floor seats. Now, to make matters even worse, the fans who paid premium prices for a stadium seat when it was still in the stadium have now found that when their seats were reallocated, that their seats for what they paid a premium price were now in a worse position than seats that are closer to the ring and are half price. And then you've got 2-for-1 tickets as well. So basically, they would have got far better seats if they bought their tickets later, and they could have probably got 2-for-1 at the same time as well. I mean, what a way to slap the loyal fans who, bought up tickets in the first couple of weeks to support the product And then all you've done is just completely slapped them in the face and told them, well, you wasted your money, you should have waited. So now the next time some big stadium show happens, everyone's going to wait for when, the ticket prices inevitably drop. Now, another issue we need to discuss is what the AEW Grand Slam show actually is. With the initial stadium show announcement, locals were thinking, well, maybe it's a pay-per-view event or maybe it's a special on Max. Apparently, Tony Khan said it wasn't going to be a pay-per-view, although apparently that wasn't made completely obvious, or, that announcement sort of went over most people's heads because people assumed it was going to be one or the other. Now, in previous years, Grand Slam has been a special episode of AEW Dynamite, and then the last couple of years, there's been more taping afterwards for Rampage and then Collision as well. But then this year, AEW Dynamite, it isn't that, the A show. This year it's been announced that Grand Slam is going to be a special episode of AEW Collision, aka a B show that barely anybody watches. A pay-per-view or a special event on Max is clearly not the same as some B show that a paltry 190,000 people watched. Keep in mind, more people watched my video on Drew McIntyre than watched AEW Collision last Saturday. This Saturday just gone, in fact, to tune in this past Saturday. And yes, I know that the Royal Rumble was airing the same day, but that is still a TV ratings calamity. And before you come crying at me with, oh well, loads of people were probably watching on Max. Nobody, and not even Tony Khan, actually knows how many people are watching AEW shows on Max. And especially, I doubt it's going to be the ridiculously large number that the AEW sickos are trying to claim it is as well. Because if it was such a wonderful number, I guarantee that one, Tony Khan would have that information, and two, he would make that information public. And speaking of United States viewers, up until a few days ago, nobody even knew when or where or how Grand Slam was actually going to be airing. Turns out it's going to be after NBA All-Star festivities on Saturday. I'll get to that in a minute. But so we have a show that's been horribly advertised in a country who doesn't watch AEW, in a city that's hard to get to, with nobody knowing when or how exactly the show is airing. At least the card was booked well in advance, right? No, of course it wasn't. Anyway, to give Tony Khan the benefit of the doubt, I wanted to do this video last week, and then I actually thought, well, no, let's wait until AEW Dynamite airs as I record this, and as this is broadcast yesterday evening for the States viewers, and very, very early this morning for us, because we're 5 hours ahead of Eastern. Anyway, that being said, at least on Dynamite, they did actually announce a couple more matches, to Tony's credit, but bear this in mind. AEW Dynamite's 10 days removed from Grand Slam, right? 11 days ago, there was only 2 announced matches for what was originally conceived as a stadium show. There were only 2 announced matches 11 days out, which boggles the mind, and now there are 4. So there you go. Despite Tony Khan's recent boasting to TV Guide, the AEW Grand Slam, I've got to read this quote, will arguably be the biggest TV card of the year. Aside from Mariah May versus Toni Storm, none of these matches feel remotely important. And to be honest, they've all just been sort of thrown together to get people from New Zealand and Australia on the show as well, pretty much at the last minute. So just nothing really seems very important. And as for my views on Toni Storm and Mariah May, the build-up to their match, I made those views very, very clear in the previous video on this channel if you want to hunt it out, but I'll give you the very quick version. AEW took the biggest Australasian star, because Toni Storm's from New Zealand, off television for 4 months, for no explanation, no particular reason that was announced, only to, upon her return, have her pretend to have amnesia. Then that gained her absolutely no psychological advantage over Mariah May, because Mariah May never bought the act. It's just the height of booking buffoonery. There's just no consequence. Things just happen, and then you sort of just have to just roll the punches, I guess, and then just accept it, and then something happens, and the match might happen, and blah, blah, blah. And then it won't even be announced until the last particular minute. Apart from that match, which was announced a few weeks out. Now, the whole Grand Slam situation is endemic of AEW's increasingly slapdash booking and lack of forward planning. And once again, to harp on it, absence of production meetings. Would it kill AEW higher-ups to sit and think for a couple of hours a week? Because I needed a couple of seconds of brain power to realise that AEW Grand Slam Brisbane was a ridiculous concept straight away, even before I knew that only 20,000 people watched the damn shows. Peak, by the way. But Tony apparently just has ideas and then just does them, and then hopes they work out. And nobody in power over there in AEW seem to know what they're doing. And I didn't write this in the format, but I want to make mention of this. Live events, right? There have been no house show live events for AEW since September. All they have to do is book the arenas for the pay-per-views and the smaller venues for Collision and Dynamite, which at least is to their credit, they're booking smaller venues, so the TV doesn't look as cavernously empty these days. But the fact is that what are these live event people doing? I mean, they don't particularly seem to have to book that much. And then when they have a show in Australia, they book the wrong size venue in the wrong city and then don't advertise it. I mean, fire the lot of them and get someone who apparently knows what they're doing. I mean, I'm sure maybe there's more story behind the scenes, but from an outward perspective, this is an absolute clown show of a live event booking affair going on here. So someone should have talked Tony out of it, absolutely. One thing they've actually done right, though, as I mentioned or alluded to before, is that the show is airing straight after the NBA All-Star festivities, because it's like stretched through the weekend into Monday, I guess, straight after the broadcast on Saturday evening. So that's going to give them, huge viewership bump. But AEW can't even claim credit for that because it was TNT's call and TNT's idea. So there you go. So the one thing that's actually going to be a good reason to have this show on Saturday as a Collision, they didn't even come up with. So there you go. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you agree with me and you're shaking your head at me, but I'm right. That being said, if you enjoyed this, I'll see you for the next one.
Anyway, and there was McAfee and Wade Barrett and Michael Cole on the call as we began this pay-per-view with, oh, for God's sake, the Women's Royal Rumble. And you forget how long time can be until you sit down to watch the Women's Royal Rumble. And let me say this, I didn't watch this thing live. I did not watch it Saturday night, but at the same time, because of my interest was piqued in the Men's Royal Rumble, I didn't want to get it spoiled for me. So I recorded the program, and then Sunday, I didn't get on the internet during the day while I attended various chores around the house. And then when I got a chance to sit down and watch it, that's what I got on the internet, so nothing would be spoiled, although something was spoiled, but we'll talk about that here. But gee, many Christmas. 30 women is too much. I'm sorry. I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. But as I said to Camille, not to her face, we were on the phone, to her voice the other day, I don't hate women's wrestling. I want women's wrestling to be an attraction where the top women wrestlers are coveted, but not where everybody gets to play. And boy, there was some brutal choreography in this. At some points, it looked like some long-legged girls, auditioning to be a Rockette with a prearranged dance routine that just happened to involve hitting somebody else in the mush. Brian, am I overstating this?
No, I think there are several potential Rockettes. B-Fab, I think, could be a Rockette.
Oh, boy. But I thought you were going to make a comment. I was taking a drink to let you sit back and analyze B-Fab's fucking
to go back,
lack of fabness.
As Buddy Holly said, oh boy, B-Fab. She was in here, but she did not start it off. She did not start it off.
No, she didn't. Io Sky and Liv Morgan started it off, and I found out something else. The aisleway in this stadium, because they had 70,000, I don't know, we'll get to, they announced it, whatever. But the aisleway was like, goddamn, a quarter of a mile, and it would take Usain Bolt 5 minutes to get to the ring in this, so there, at one point, during the men's rumble, they did an entrance and milked the whole thing to where nobody made any contact by the time that the next entrance began. So, and especially Liv Morgan and Io Sky's little bitty legs are so little bitty short. They can't cover a lot of ground. So that they started. And if you think I'm for an hour and 15-minute match, if
Oh,
I'm gonna
come
try to give you any goddamn
It's the women's Royal Rumble.
play-by-play or blow-by-blow or critique everybody's wrist locks, you're out of your mind.
This is a big match. It only happens once a year.
Well, don't worry, we've got plenty to talk about.
Or if the Saudis want to buy it twice a year.
Or, and then potentially what'll happen when, some other country gets all the money. Then we'll just lose all our events.
They're going to Saudi Arabia next year. You should have appreciated this. This is the last women's Royal Rumble with skin.
Well, are they going to take 30 women over there and put them in scuba diver outfits?
Should they use this as a chance to separate the two Royal Rumbles and do them as two separate events, the women's event and the men's event?
Oh, please, please. They could do the women's event at the Performance Center. Anyway, number 3 was Roxanne Perez. She ran, and it took her almost 30 seconds to get to the fucking ring. I mean, thank God Jey Uso didn't have to do his big entrance all the way through this fucking thing. Of that distance, my God, he'd have been a candidate for a heart transplant. So then number 4 was Lyric Valedictorian. And number 5 was Chelsea Green, and she did her normal entrance with it. It's so over the top with the gesticulating and the facial expressions and everything that it's almost off-putting the level of animation, but she took forever to get there because she was doing all that stuff and stripping as she went. And she got in, and the first 2 strikes that she threw was a forehand slap and a backhand slap, and she whipped both of them. You couldn't really tell she missed on the first one because of the camera angle. But the second one, she tried a backhand and went 6 inches over his girl's head. Girl sold it like she'd been slapped by fucking Dana White's Power Slap champion. Or Dana White himself, for that matter. And then came B-Fab. And you could hear people asking the guy sitting next to him what time it was in this stadium of 70,000 people. It's like they all held their breath and thought, if we think hard, maybe she'll go away. She is worse than Model Girl. Because a Model Girl does have the endearing, confused deer in a headlight look that she uses in everything, right? But she's a baby face. She's supposed to be somewhat simple-minded and pure of heart. But B-Fab's a baby face, and she walks around, strutting around like she's a goddamn heel. And she's just rotten. It's an athletic girl that has no idea of the concept of wrestling, doing choreography as she sees it in her mind, that as long as you do this and they do that, there's no emotion or facial expression or level of aggression or any effective realism or let me get you lost in this suspension of disbelief. It's just, I'm going to take my right foot and throw it up on your shoulder. Am I exaggerating a fine?
No, there were certain women in the company, and actually the 2 cases you have right there, Maxine Dupree and B-Fab, they're both tall with long legs. And it's not like Barry Windham with long legs, where it just looks so graceful running the ring. It's not like that at all. It's like you said it before, like a deer on ice at times.
Yeah.
You're waiting to see what's going to hit the ground first, the ass, the feet. Like they don't know how to fall right, but they could both be Rockettes. I think they could both be really good Rockettes.
One could be the Rock and the other one could be the It. Anyway, so then Ivy Nile came in to straighten everybody out, number 7. Zoe Stark, number 8. I've noted they're not wasting the big names early, are they? Except for Liv Morgan. And Chelsea, they used her a little bit. And here came Lash Legend. And she got in and fucked some shit up. Remember when we were still watching NXT like 4 years ago, she was kind of hilariously bad at the start, right? I wonder why we haven't seen her in 4 years move out of NXT.
Well, they just started using her on the main show with, she's a tag team partner. I don't remember her name though.
Well, but,
Lash Legend and her friend.
and Wyatt Earp and Lash Legend. I don't know, but the point is, if it's taking her 4 years to get this fucking far, she may not live long enough to make the main roster. And she fought with B-Fab, some forearm potatoes and awkward kicks, and then Chelsea dumped B-Fab and got a pop for that. And then we started, okay, now it's the second 10, so we're going to step it up a notch. Number 10 was Bianca. Number 11, Shayna. Number 12, Bailey. Now we got a few things going on. I didn't keep track of who all got dumped when, because then there's another 30 names to write down.
Hey, what did you think of the graphics though, here in this match and during the men's match, in terms of at the bottom of the screen they had how many people had already come out, how many people had been eliminated, how many more people were to come?
That was brilliant. And you can tell Lee Fitting, ESPN, any kind of that, it looked like a sports graphic where you could instantly tell, you know, depending on what sport it was, who'd scored the points or who'd been in the quarter or whatever the case it was. So especially when it got down to the end, you say, okay, here's the 6 that are active, 24 have been eliminated, blah, blah, blah. All that made it somewhat easier to follow than in previous years when they didn't have the capability or the knowledge to line it all up like that, where it was not just a garbled mess on the screen. So I like that part. But then getting back to what I didn't like,
Back to the match.
number 13 was Cruella DeVille. At least she came in at a dead run, like she meant some business. And then came Model Girl. And she got in, and she and Ivy exchanged some awkward moves, and she whipped a kick over her head or past her face or whatever. And then she stood around for a second looking confused, and then she fired up and did the worm in reverse. And now that apparently is the thing. The people will cheer for the simple-minded little thing. If she just gets in the middle of the ring and tries to pose, and fire up and flex her muscles, and she's goddamn so big around, the muscles on her arm look like mosquito bites on a strand of spaghetti. And if she turns sideways, sticks her tongue out, she look like a zipper. And when she gets a sunburn, she looks like a thermometer. She uses a Cheerio for a hula hoop.
All right. Will you leave
I
her
could
alone?
go on. But then came Naomi. That should be some kind of TV show on Bravo. Then came Naomi. And then was Jada Parker and Piper. What's her last? Piper and the Gates of Dawn.
Piper Niven.
Her former punk rock group.
No, that's a great album. You know, not a lot of people like the Sid Barrett. I shouldn't say that. A lot of people like the David Gilmour stuff more than Sid Barrett. But anyway.
Well, you see what happened to Sid over it, don't you?
You ever hear that story when they were recording, I think, Wish You Were Here? He showed up in the studio.
They didn't know who he was.
Bald and fat, and he said, when do I play my part? And then they all started crying.
And then he left.
That's why they were a miserable band. They had some good songs though.
Well, but did they have any good songs in the Royal Rumble?
The women's?
The tune doesn't come to my mind. But next was Natalia. And then the number 19 came Jordan Grace. And this, you watch the same things I watch. This is the first time I've actually seen her in the ring. Well, have we seen something I'm not remembering?
The question would be, did we have this exact conversation a year ago? I don't remember if you watched the Women's Royal Rumble, so I can't say, but she was in last year.
Was she?
Yeah. But I don't remember if you watched the whole thing. It could have been one of those ones where you zip through it.
I think because there was more matches on last year's show, wasn't there? Because they had a shorter aisle. They had room for 3 more matches. So I think I may have just said, oh, I can't watch 2 Royal Rumbles back to back and let the women, ruin my taste buds for dinner. But anyway, it's the first time I remember seeing her, and she came out, and they've obviously got plans. She beat up several of the girls and dumped Jada Parker and gave Piper a Death Valley driver and got a little holy shit chant going. And so they're obviously going to use her because they wanted her to make an impact. And the people, of course, now this is not a sample of the audience in Dubuque. These are the most motivated individuals, but they knew who she was. And then she hugs Naomi because they said they're friends from TNA. So this TNA, Vince didn't mention the companies that he was working with, few though they may have been, to the level that they mentioned TNA on this show. So they're friends, they hugged, and then Bianca came up and snatched Jordan by the hair and tried to dump her. It's like, because Bianca's a WWE lifer, right? She's never been to the other side of the septic tank and knows where her bread's buttered on, as the old saying goes. You always buttered your bread over a septic tank, haven't you, Brian?
No, I buttered my bagel though over the sink.
The outhouse? So anyway, there's going to be bad feelings there with Bianca and Naomi over Jordan. So we'll tune in on days of our menstruation to keep track of that. And then here came Mia Yim, number 20.
Meechin.
I'm reaching.
No, Meechin. Her name is Meechin.
Oh, it'd always be Mia Yim to me and Yim. And then number 21, and her and she. Alexa Bliss came back and the people were screaming, and I don't know why. What is the attraction of her? And she just came back. Her last action was in January of 2024. Why was she out for a year? What injury did she?
She had a baby.
Oh, geez, that's a serious injury.
It may have happened after an injury though, but she was out and then she had a baby.
Wait a minute. You're saying the injury caused a pregnancy?
No, I'm saying that she may have been hurt and then got pregnant.
She wasn't able to run away with
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not her doctor. I don't know the schedule. I don't know what time. I don't know when she was supposed. I don't know anything. I just don't know.
Have you not got the notes on her ovulation yet? We were supposed to forward those over in the files.
Well, she's back, and apparently a lot of those fans either they love surprises or they really like those awful segments she was constantly in. They seem to be excited, but
she's awfully slight to have had an offspring. If she was pregnant, that would have doubled her size, wouldn't it? From 80 pounds to 160? What would that? Seems like that's a serious medical condition.
I always think you're way too hard on Liv Morgan when you say like, oh, she's tiny, she isn't that. Alexa Bliss, you could say that about. She's not.
I just did.
She's not only smaller, but she's not only smaller than everyone. She also has supernatural powers. That's what I'm afraid of. She came out with that stupid doll. Remember the doll?
Yeah, Jerry Mahoney. She needs to upgrade to Knucklehead Smith.
Is she going to join the Wyatt Six?
Maybe she'll join Harley Cameron and they can throw their voices back and forth to the different dolls.
No. Harley Cameron can actually do it.
And, yes, it depends on the doll you got. Because really the doll is the key to the whole thing. Once you get your hand all the way up we'll talk
back
about
to
that.
the Women's Royal Rumble, ladies and gentlemen.
And Wade Barrett is like, people said she wouldn't come back. Stop reading the dirt sheets, Cole. So then number 22 was Zelina. Number 23 was Candy LaRue. Number 24 was Stephanie Backer. And then
She had a big pop, surprisingly.
Well, yes, she did. I didn't say she didn't. I just didn't comment because. And then number 25, Trish Stratus. And they popped big because she's a surprise. She's a legend. She ticks all the boxes. But she got in there and did a bunch of stuff and looked better than, I don't know, 12 or 13 maybe of the previous entrants in this thing. How old is she now? She's got to be up there. She's eligible for AARP at this point, isn't she?
No, she's only 49.
What?
She's only a few years older than me. Wow.
Well, so there's still a chance.
That's crazy. I don't know about that. I got a good thing over here.
Well, depends on.
I don't want some woman that's going to just run out in the night and go to the Royal Rumble to participate and lose and lose. No,
She didn't run out in the night. It was 5 o'clock local time.
she didn't even win.
Still daylight. Well, now you spoiled it for everybody. So,
I'm sorry.
God damn it, you can't do that. People won't listen to us if we're gonna spoil this shit. But yeah, unfortunately, Trish didn't make it, but she looked good. And number 26 was Rochelle. And then came number 27. Charlotte has returned. Charlotte Flair, big pop, comes out. Goddamn, she looked like Theda Bara in a silent movie. Big cowl and cape and robe and the pyro. And she took her time on much of the walkout. It has a brace on the knee, but it was covered up with spangly lame. And again, it used to be a Pat Patterson thing that the guys, and there was no women's rumble then, so don't complain, but the guys that you really wanted to feature going forward, you really wanted to keep strong, you really whatever, they will make an impact when they come in. And there was some of that in the men's rumble also this time, but it hasn't seemed as important, or maybe just some of these guys don't know how to feed each other and set up to feed a fucking guy coming in the ring, whatever. But at least Charlotte went over and chopped everybody and clotheslined everybody and boom, 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 and did some spots with Jordan Grace and dumped Piper. And okay, you know, I've made an impact. Everybody knows I'm here now, that type of thing. So that was good. And then came Julia. I liked her better when she was hosting that cooking show.
No, it's a different woman.
Is that not the same one?
No, this is a different spelling altogether.
Oh, well, I thought it was a showbiz name for the cooking show. And then number 29 came up, and it was the refrigerator Nia Jax. And she came out and dumped Trish with Candy LaRue's help because they were involved in a whole little tug of war thing there. And of course, the refrigerator gets in and wallers around, dumping, or not dumping, but knocking over everything in its path. Sort of like the same way as when they bring any major appliance into your home. And then finally, number 30, Nikki Bella. They got a big pop because people didn't expect that. And which one? She was the one that was not the one that was behind the one in 31 and 1. She was not the one that's married to Bryan Danielson, is she?
No, that's her sister.
Yeah, well, it had to be that one because I knew there's only 2 of them. I just can't keep them straight.
She's the date John Cena. He's here for his like goodbye year. All of a sudden, she's going to return now. That's awkward.
Well, that's that way she can. With her and John, they can come and go at the same time. But is this the first time I've seen her wrestle?
No,
I don't-
no. We've definitely seen her years ago.
Or was I just saying I don't want to see this?
She was
And
the
just
one
not
that-
watch.
She was the one that was excited to see Vader at the Hall of Fame.
Well, yes, I remember talking about that, making fun of that, and you know, and folks, just so you know, he passed away at the time. She didn't know he was dead. That clip's on YouTube. But I honestly can't remember. I don't know what the fuck did her and her sister do. I can't remember. So I don't. Anyway, she got face to face with the refrigerator. And when they had their stare down, apparently the spot was going to be that then all the other girls who've been selling, they get up and they surround the fridge like hungry Girl Scouts on a sleepover. But when they were face to face with Nikki and Fridge, Nia had to turn around and yell, "Get up!" And all the other, and then they started standing up, right? And then they jump her. And she pushes all of them, like 9 of them off, and then they stop her, and then Nikki tried to wrestle, and it was 1 hour and 5 minutes into this match, and there were still 10 girls left. So I decided to do the humane thing and skip ahead until we got down to nut cutting time, as they used to say down in the country, and that was Charlotte and Nia Jax. And now we pick, and Roxanne also. She was in there too. And picking it up there, Charlotte was trying to mount some offense against the Fridge. So Roxanne was really wanting to make a name for herself here. And she jumped in from behind and clipped Charlotte's knee, and then jumped on her, started getting some heat on her. And then she jumped up and she started getting on Nia Jax. Literally, she was up on Nia's back, and the Fridge is trying to dump Roxanne off of her, and she's trying to hold her over the rope, and Charlotte came up from behind and dumped Nia right over the top of Roxanne and the top rope, and boom, the Fridge was out. And now it's Roxanne and Charlotte, and you're thinking, well, my God, could there be an upset here? As we'll find out later on, any weird thing can happen. But they went back and forth a little bit. Roxanne ain't bad. She's painfully short, but she ain't bad. And Charlotte knocked Roxanne to the floor after an exchange, and Charlotte wins the Women's Royal Rumble, so she gets to pick whatever champion she wants to face out of all the available champions at WrestleMania. So good triumphs over evil in the end.
Well, is she a babyface?
I don't know. I'm just glad to see her.
What do you want to see? Charlotte against Rhea Ripley again, or Charlotte against Tiffany Stratton?
Woo! Selfishly, I think Charlotte and Rhea Ripley, again, they're always going to have a great match, but to be honest, again, they're both. Rhea's a babyface, regardless of how they portray Charlotte. She's got some goodwill because she's just returned from an injury, and Rhea against Tiffy can kind of be like the battle of the Nature Boys in terms of this arrogant, older, more experienced, and now possibly beloved blonde female icon versus this new bratty, new kid on the block type of thing, spoiled brat type of thing. So that probably would be easier to promote right now. But that's just me.
Well, we'll see what happens, but big Royal Rumble, what's her name? Alexa Bliss's big return. We'll see how that goes.
You can't use the word big in any way about Alexa Bliss.
But you must be happy. The person you would probably want to win out of everyone in that match won.
Yes. So but also for business. She's a big name. She's been gone for a while, so therefore we miss her because she went away, and that's perfect to me for a WrestleMania main event in the women's division.
Several people have sent this in. I don't know if you saw it, but it may be fun to go through this. Alan Blackstock on Twitter at Alan_cheapshot, a friend of mine, a friend of the show, did a thread entitled Hulk Hogan's Lies Over the Years. Did you see any of this?
I saw the initial tweet, and I didn't follow the thread because I've heard many of the lies, but we can go over them here if you'd like.
All right, well, here are some of them, and Alan does a good job researching these, so I'm sure these are all accurate. The wrestler director Darren Aronofsky offered him the lead role 3 times. Hogan claims he turned it down because he didn't deserve it. Aronofsky categorically denies that Hogan was ever considered for the role.
Fucking hell. Can you see the footage where he's working at the deli and he gets mad at the meat slicer and everything? There's a 6'8" fucking 325-pound Hulk Hogan's working there. That wouldn't be distracting from the overall story of the movie. Yeah.
Hulk Hogan was an all-state pitcher in high school, and he was scouted by both the New York Yankees and the Cincinnati Reds, but an injury prevented him from signing with either team.
Oh my God, yeah, the injury was when the fucking scout that was looking at him went blind.
Yeah, by the way, how much did he hate Randy Savage? So much that he made up a story about being scouted by the Cincinnati Reds.
Yes, who Randy Savage actually was and did play for the minor league affiliate of, et cetera, et cetera. And so now I've never even heard that one.
It's a good one. I never heard that one either. Here's another one. Oh, this is an interesting one for you. Hulk Hogan claims he's the one who first noticed Kevin Owens' potential.
What?
Here's a quote. Well, I hate to brag about it, but I'm the first one to point the finger at Kevin Owens. And then Allen wrote, after a decade of solid work on the Indies.
I was about to say, I guarantee you, people were talking about Steen for good and bad before Hulk Hogan had ever heard of him.
Hulk Hogan starred in the movies Mr. Nanny and Santa with Muscles. Hogan claims he rewrote both scripts entirely, only to have his writing credits stolen from him by the Dastardly Writers Guild. I don't know that one either. I never heard that one.
Oh, well, because you have never heard all of Hulk Hogan's lies unless you've heard every word that's ever come out of Hulk Hogan's mouth. Because it's a different one almost every time. So some of these, yes, are new and entertaining.
Hulk Hogan says he used to fight Pride Fighters in the 70s.
What?
Pride Fighting Championship was founded in 1997.
There's no such thing as pride. There's no such thing as mixed martial art. Hogan wasn't fighting anybody in the 70s except the guy that was overcharging him on his guitar strings. That was the whole deal about Hogan, is that they weren't sure at the beginning because he was just a big guy that played in a band, right? He had the size, but he wasn't an athlete or didn't have any credentials at St. like all the other guys they trained in Florida. The Steve Kern had an amateur athletic background, all those guys. But Hogan didn't. He was just big and played in a band, right? That's why they had to fuck with him.
That's right. He was too busy playing baseball. How was he going to learn how to be a tough guy? Hulk Hogan claims he was the first to slam Andre the Giant, that Andre weighed 600 pounds when Hogan body slammed him, and the lie that Andre died a few days after the slam. Hogan also claimed that he tore 18 muscles in his back slamming Andre.
Are there 18 muscles in your back?
I'm not sure.
He didn't tear a goddamn thing slamming Andre, because as we've mentioned many times, Andre went up for him because that was the original finish, and he didn't weigh 600 pounds. He was barely over 5 at his death, and that was 6 years later. And what else is wrong with that? And 18 million people, well, not 18 million, but a significant number of people were in the I Slammed Andre Club way before Hogan. That was probably, well, besides the fact before WrestleMania 3 in 1987, that was probably the last slam Andre may have ever taken.
No.
Did he?
Ultimate Warrior got him a whole bunch of times.
Okay, in those 30-second matches or whatever the fuck. But point is, that wasn't even the first time that Hogan had slammed Andre. Hogan slammed Andre in their 1980 run when Hogan was heel and Andre was babyface. And Kamala slammed Andre, and Connect slammed Andre, and Harley Race slammed Andre, and Inoki. There are the clips. We have gone down the list before. Whoever Andre wanted to slam him got to slam him. Anybody he didn't want to slam him didn't get to slam him.
According to the Hulkster, he partied with John Belushi after WrestleMania 2 in 1986. John Belushi sadly died in 1982.
I was about to say.
He has no shame. He just says anything.
And because you know why? Because WrestleMania 2 was in New York, Chicago, and LA.
Yeah.
And he could put himself in either Chicago or LA, and both would be people there. Oh, Belushi would have been there, even New York or whatever.
New York. That's right.
Except that poor John had been dead for 4 years at that point.
Hulk Hogan, and there's a clip here of Hulk Hogan wrestling The Undertaker. Hulk Hogan told The Undertaker that he had caused permanent damage to his neck by botching the Tombstone pile driver. The Undertaker believed him for the better part of 2 years before finally seeing a tape of the match which clearly showed Hogan's head came nowhere near the chair.
Never touched. No, but he wanted, see, that's another thing. Hogan was very smart. He learned all the old tricks, make the young guys that are coming up feel in some way indebted to you, or that they should be apologetic to you or deferential to you, or you've got something over, well, you hurt me, kid, but it's okay. That's the business. And then they would be more inclined to do something for him in the future to make up for what they didn't do to him to begin with.
Hulk Rules, an album released by Hulk Hogan and the Wrestling Boot Band. There's a picture of it here. One of the most famous tracks from the album is the tribute song Hulkster in Heaven. According to Hogan, he met a very ill Make-A-Wish kid in England, and he got him a ticket to SummerSlam at Wembley Stadium to watch him wrestle in the main event. Hogan wasn't at SummerSlam. He wasn't in the UK at the time. So now he's making up Make-A-Wish stories. Hulk Hogan claimed that he was asked to join a startup company known as UFC. While UFC wasn't nearly as popular as it is today, Hogan said he wouldn't have joined because, quote, guys got beat up when the fight should be stopped. While in WCW, Hogan said a pay-per-view bout between himself and Mike Tyson was supposed to commence. Hogan's excuse as to why it didn't happen? Tyson was too scared. Hulk
And
Hogan,
obviously, well, wait a minute. I was about to say that neither one of those two things ever remotely occurred. And the UFC, so Hogan was going to leave Vince in 1993, and instead of going to WCW, he was going to just say, well, after 15 years of wrestling, I'll just be an Ultimate Fighter.
it's the dream match we never got. Hulk Hogan versus Hulk Hogan versus Royce Gracie.
Or Royce Gracie. Royce Gracie versus Hulk Hogan would have been a main event anything.
All right, let's get back to this man's lies. Hulk Hogan claimed on an episode of Hogan Knows Best that the reason he didn't get the offer for the George Foreman grill was because he was out picking up the kids from school.
Yeah.
That's not the way business works, folks. That's not the way it works. Hulk Hogan did claim that back in his heyday, he wrestled in 400 days in 1 year.
And this is my favorite.
Hogan claimed that since he traveled so frequently between the United States and Japan, the time difference made the 400 days a possibility. And you never saw that one before.
You know, that's the one I always bring up. You never saw that one?
I never ever saw that one.
No, that's the greatest thing, because obviously there is some small germ of truth in the concept of part of this, in that because of the international date line and the time of the trip, when you fly to Japan, you arrive, I can't remember which way it is, but you either arrive a day later or a day early. You know what I'm saying? Because you fly across the international date line, so you either arrive the day later than you should have, or you skipped a day, or you've made up a day. But the point is, what he's trying to say is that he was working 400 days in 1 year, not 400 times, but 400 days in 1 year, because he would fly back from Japan across the international date line and wrestle twice on a Tuesday, ignoring the fact that if you were then to go the other way, you would lose the day that you just picked up, so it's not mathematically possible anyway. So yes, that's my favorite. Like, he's Superman flying around the world at the equator to reverse the spin of the earth and turn back time.
Well, maybe he did that in this one too. In Hulk Hogan's autobiography, he made the claim that Elvis was a huge Hulk Hogan fan before Hogan joined the WWF. He did work in Memphis. However, Elvis died in 1977.
Yes. Elvis died before Terry Bollea ever got a wrestling lesson. So Elvis was not a fan of Hulk Hogan, because there was no such person. And Elvis was a wrestling fan, and we've documented that. And he used to love to sneak in the Ellis Auditorium and watch Cora Combs' matches, because she was quite a looker back in the late 50s. But if Elvis was ever going to have a wrestling match, it would have been with Jerry Lawler for a shoot, because they were in Memphis and everybody knew everybody, and that didn't happen either. So,
I mean, let me stop this list for a second. Do you think that's where it comes from? Like, he hears the genesis of a story, he hears something that was real. He's in
Yes.
Memphis and he hears, oh, when he was alive, Elvis used to always watch wrestling. We knew that. And then he just puts himself in the story?
yeah, he puts himself in the story as he sees fit.
Hulk Hogan claims that both Metallica and the Rolling Stones wanted him as their bass player. Metallica member Lars Ulrich apparently came to Hogan himself to ask him to play with the group.
Lars Ulrich's comments were, what?
Hulk Hogan claimed he had been offered and turned down a so-called Legends match at WrestleMania 22. The alleged match, Hulk Hogan versus Greg Valentine. They were never going to do that as a Legends match at a wrestling.
No, and what 22 was what? That 17 was in Houston, 2001. So 22 was
20 was
2000.
New York, 21 was LA. I forget what 22 would have been.
But about 2006.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't going to happen. You think, was he just trying to be nice to Greg that day? Was Greg on site when he was doing that interview?
It is just so interesting how he just seems to say anything. He claimed he was blacklisted from Hollywood because he turned down a gay producer's advances in the 1980s.
What?
He came up with the idea for the NWO, but he wanted it to be him, the Booty Man, and the Nasty Boys.
Now that's what I believe.
I do believe that. He had Brian Blair in there. I really believe it.
Yes, I believe that one. And that would have been just swell.
This is an interesting twist on a story you've probably heard. He claimed that Harley Race came into the arena with a gun in Kansas City in the 80s and set the ring on fire. And then when he ran into Hogan, he shook his hand, thanked him for all he had done for wrestling, and asked for a job. What? That is the most extraordinary fucking story. He set the ring on fire.
The ring on fire and then thanked Hogan and asked him for a job. With the company whose ring he had just burned.
There's a ring burning in the background while he's talking to Hogan.
If I get him another ring or maybe even just a garden hose, will they hire me? Okay, let's dissect that for a second. Harley did go in. Harley was part owner of the Kansas City territory.
And St. Louis eventually.
And St. Louis and Kansas City at that point, the Central States territory. And the first time that Vince came in, Harley did go there, did he not? And Harley was not happy, was he not? And Harley, I'm sure, if he was on the premises, had a gun somewhere with him. So those things have been documented and are probably pretty true.
Yes.
Was Hogan even there?
He may have been because, you know,
It was
again,
the first expansion. It was 86. Okay.
and
He
it was St.
probably-
Louis, which was a big city for them.
Obviously, Harley didn't go out in the arena in front of the people and set the ring on fire.
That would have been
Harley may have.
Oh my God! Can you imagine a wrestler just? Oh, wait, that's Harley Race. What's he doing? Oh my God! He's setting the ring on fire.
Clearly, he's unhappy.
He must be looking for a job.
Yeah, he's obviously trying to get on here. That worked the last time when we were in Peoria and Paul Christie set the ring on fire. And then we went to Indianapolis and Bruiser set the ring on fire. It was Angelo Papo in Peoria that set the ring on fire. But anyway, so Harley did go, and there was an altercation backstage, but Hulk Hogan is never mentioned as being a part of it. It wasn't Harley just letting people know what he thought of the whole thing and how they were running his town, and everybody was pretty much letting him say whatever the fuck he was going to say so he'd leave. Is the way I kind of remember it.
Harley showing up with a gun is part of what I remember, but Harley carried a gun everywhere.
Yeah,
There was nothing about lighting the ring on fire. He would go there in a couple of years and he would work with Hogan, but I don't, if Harley Race
But
was
he didn't
alive, I
have
don't know
Hulk.
if this story would be out there.
well, also Harley Race would not Hulk Hogan for a Harley Race